All right, everybody. 154 participants and counting. Welcome to the 12th annual business meeting. My name is Brad Evans, your current Swiss Army knife, former Swiss Army knife also. I'll be your host this evening to get this thing kicked off. The annual business meeting is a chance to hear all about all the facets of our organization: soccer, business, ownership, and social impact, and also to hear directly from your elected representatives, the Alliance Council. Democracy in sports was and continues to be a differentiator when we joined MLS. It's about staying connected and accountable to the Alliance, our fans, the most important part of the club. Thank you to the Alliance Council for their role in democracy in sports, as well as organizing this evening. You'll learn more about the council this evening, and all Alliance members are eligible to nominate themselves and join. So for tonight, participation is encouraged. This is a dialogue, question, answer. We hope to enlighten you in many ways and give a good year in review and hopefully a preview of next year. This evening will be divided into different speakers. During that speaker's presentation, if you have any questions, please click the Q&A feature at the bottom of the screen. At the end of most of the segments, that speaker will then take a few minutes to answer all of those questions. If we don't get to your question due to time constraints that I'm going to follow very strictly, so if you get cut off, speakers, if you get cut off, we are adhering to a strict timetable tonight. We'll follow up with you after the meeting so that we can get an answer to your question. So our first speaker and guest, we've got Gary Stevenson, the Deputy Commissioner of MLS and President and Managing Director of Major League Soccer Business Ventures. Gary oversees the domestic and international commercial business of MLS, which includes some, for those of you who don't know, Soccer United Marketing, media and broadcasting, digital club services, marketing, consumer products, special events. I guess the list goes on and on. Thank you, Gary, for joining us. Again, if you've got questions for Gary as he's speaking, feel free to click that question and answer button at the bottom of your screen. But for now, Gary, I'll let you take it from here.
Thanks very much, Brad, and thanks to all of you who are taking some time. I will tell you, I've worked in sports for about 40 years, for 40 years. And this meeting and kind of the construct of this meeting, I hope will become part of our industry going forward. I think it's a terrific opportunity for you to interact with the Sounders and the front office, but also to hold all of us accountable as we go forward. And I think that accountability and your support certainly resonates throughout the league. So thank you, Brad, and thank you, Adrian, for inviting me to be here tonight. And I just want to take a few minutes and talk a little bit about kind of how this year has gone. Your club continues to be kind of the model of excellence in so many areas. And before I get started, I did want to thank the fans, because what you do for our league, what you do for this club, the example, every time we bring a new expansion club in, they say to us, tell us who we should talk to. And the first thing we say is you should call our club in Seattle and try to understand what they do and how they do it. Because if we had 30 Seattles in this league, it would be terrific. When we started this year, I think all of you know, it was our 25th anniversary. We were set up, I think, to have the best year we ever had. Our broadcast schedule, we had over 35 telecasts on network television. We were returning to ABC for 8 or 10 matches. By comparison, in 2015, when we started this new television deal, we had no games on broadcast television. And most of our games, at least on the Disney networks, were on ESPN2. We only had a couple on ESPN. So we were set up for a great year. There was a lot of excitement about our league. There were a lot of excitement about new players. There was a lot of excitement about Nashville and Miami joining the league. And so we were off to a good start. Every metric we looked at in the first 2 weeks of the season were the best that we'd ever had. And then COVID hit. And unlike the NBA or the NHL, who were already through the majority of their season, we in baseball, I think, were in the most difficult positions because our seasons had just started. So we had only played 2 of 34 regular season matches. The NFL, of course, dodged it until the fall. But we were confronted immediately with what to do. I don't know whether we were the first to come up with the bubble, but I do know about 5 days after we closed the league down in early March, I was on a phone call with the head of MGM in Las Vegas. And he said to me, he said, "Hey, we have an idea." At that time, I think all of our heads were spinning pretty good. So ideas about playing at the time were like crazy. But he said, "What if we could create a bubble? What if we could create a bubble in Las Vegas and we give everyone stays in one place?" And it was such a foreign idea at the time. But I remember thinking about it that day, and I think they probably talked to the NBA about the same time. So that's when the idea of a bubble was created. But if you think about what we had to do between early March and when we went, we actually got to Orlando on June the 24th is when the first team came in. So in essence, we had 3 months. We had to create testing and medical protocol. We had to get alignment with government, both municipal and state and federal authorities, which they, as you know, with the kind of leadership we had, there were really no guidance that we had at the time. We had to get alignment with our players, who we had just recently done a collective bargaining agreement in January. We had to have alignment with our club owners and our coaches. We had to figure out what our quarantine rules are. We had to find alignment with Disney, and we were thinking about Disney, and we were thinking about a couple different options for this idea. And so it was a full plate for 3 months. I think one of the most important things we did early, and I think what helped us at least be successful in the bubble, is that we hired a group of 6 infectious disease doctors. From, it was a doctor from Columbia and a doctor from Duke and 4 other universities. And they really drove all of our decisions on the medical side, because before that, there were a lot of amateur doctors on CNN and Fox, and in every conversation that you had, there were a lot of people that were experts on this. But we decided to take it out of our hands and ask a group of infectious disease doctors to really guide us in what we did. And the plan that they put together and the bubble that we created in Orlando, and I'm going to touch on that in a second, allowed us to do 2 things. One, it allowed us to catch the virus when it came in, because as you know, we had all of our clubs there, and we had contingents of 45 to 50 people. We had another 300 staff people. We took the Swan and Dolphin hotels, and we took them out in their entirety. Every club had their own floor. Every club had 3 or 4 different rooms where only they could go. Our clubs were tested every 2 days. Every club had 2 buses, and we had social distancing on the buses. And so we were very precise in our protocol. And I will tell you that every club we had, and your club was one of the leaders, were so vigilant on the procedures, and we were worried about would people leave the bubble and do those kinds of things. We had none of that with our players, and as a result, we had an outbreak early, as you know, with 2 of our clubs. We isolated that outbreak. But other than that, we only had 2 positives when we were there for over 2 months. I was there for, I think, 48 days. And it got to the point where when the tournament was over, we had a number of players and a number of coaches who came up to us and said, "I'm not sure we want to leave here because we feel so safe." And so we were able to execute that, but we were only able to execute it because of that initial decision we made to have the 6 infectious disease doctors put together the plan that we followed. While we were in Orlando, we played 51 matches. We tried a variety of different things. We tried 9 a.m. matches Eastern time. They were a dud. It didn't work for us. We tried different kind of camera angles. We had 33 cameras, different angles that we tested. As you know, we tested audio during VAR for the first time ever. And that's something that we're going to work on perhaps in the future because it was very well received by fans. We had drones taking pictures that we'd never had before. ESPN thinks that we did the first drone replay in history. I don't know whether that's true or not, but we'll have to look it up on Guinness World Record book. We used augmented reality. When you watched a match in Orlando, imagine that was just a field, and everything that you saw except for one strip of the field boards was all virtual reality. So all the commercial inventory you saw, the big scoreboards you saw, the fan interaction boards, that was all done virtually. So we programmed all those things virtually. As a result of what we learned there, we then were able to take those virtual footprints and then use them in the local markets. So when you watch our matches now, we're able to take that virtual footprint and from what we learned in Orlando, and we put it into the local markets. We also, for the first time ever, were able to create, by shooting at the same boards, we could create 3 different commercial feeds. So one for the United States, one for Canada, and one for international, which allowed the clubs in Canada and the television networks in Canada to have their own commercial footprint, and we had our own commercial footprint, which we've never had. So that'll be something we'll be able to use in the future. So we were able to learn a lot in Orlando. Very controversial. Everybody had an opinion on it. Should we use field mics or should we have artificial crowd noise? I don't think I've ever seen an issue in my career that where people were one way or the other. It was 50% like this and 50% like that. As it turns out, I think the way Fox did the audio ended up being what our fans preferred across the country the most. I think we had a successful event in Orlando. It was hard. Our players worked hard. We got 3 matches in for each club. And then we had a tournament. Portland, your friends from Portland won the Champions League spot. But the television ratings, while they were modest increases compared to all the other television ratings in sports, I would say it was a big win for us because we were up about 6% on ESPN. The NHL during the Stanley Cup was down 50%. And so we had some modest increases there. But what we really found, where we really had a big increase commercially, was that the digital noise and the digital following of the tournament kind of broke a lot of our metrics and a lot of our records. So that was positive. We got through Orlando, and then we said, okay, how do we try to do the same thing in local markets? And again, we went to our doctors. They gave us a plan, and we decided that we had to put some competitive balance issues aside, and because we wanted to focus on safety. So what we focused on were clubs going in and out of markets the same day, and we had very few overnights. And so that's how we got started in the local market. So there was a lot less interaction. Those markets that allowed fans, in September it was very few, but those markets that allowed fans had to follow very strict protocols for the fans. There was a lot of separation between the field and the fans, so we felt like we had security there. And we got through, in most cases, 21 of 34 matches. We had some isolated cases of COVID, but based on what we learned on Orlando, we had a good idea how to handle those medically. We had a bit of an outbreak in Colorado that actually was more on the technical side than the player side. A number of the coaches got sick, and fortunately, nobody got real sick in Colorado. And so it's been a difficult year, but we ended up playing about 70% of our matches. We televised about 100% of our national matches. Our clubs, for the most part, were able to satisfy both their broadcast and their sponsorship agreements locally. And so we now head cautiously and nervously into the playoffs on November the 20th. We have a great television schedule, one of the best schedules we've had. But again, we are uh, testing our players and testing on a regular basis, and we're keeping track of where we are medically. Anytime there is an instance when you saw a match canceled, we always erred on the side of caution. When we were down in Orlando, there was a match on a Sunday morning between DC and Toronto that was canceled about 30 minutes before the match. And that's because we were not able to get the test results. The test results ended up coming back negative, but we canceled the match in advance to be cautious, and we're glad we did that. We'll follow the same thing as it comes up with the playoffs. What I would say is that one of the other things we've been focusing on this year are some new technology things that we think are going to be really helpful for fan engagement in the future. You may have heard of a company called Second Spectrum. We've installed Second Spectrum cameras in every stadium, and really what they do is they give you advanced data and advanced statistics, so we can track every player during the game, during the match. We can track the movement of every player, and you can think about how that will manifest itself into a better broadcast. Because if a player makes a run, in the past we haven't been able to track that player if he wasn't on the camera, but a player that could be coming down the opposite flank, we'll be able to track that angle, we'll be able to track the speed. There'll be a number of things that we'll be able to do in the future that we think will enhance our broadcast. It will provide some second screen opportunities, and we'll be testing some of the Second Spectrum data and Second Spectrum statistics during the playoffs. So you'll see during our playoffs this year the uses of Second Spectrum. So it's been a very difficult year. I think we had a choice early in the year. Should we not play games, or should we try to create an environment that is safe for our players and go ahead and play games? I'm glad we did it. I can tell you that it was hard. I admire what the players. I really admire what the technical staffs have done to have their players ready this year, because it's been a difficult year. But I think it's been a difficult year for our fans as well. And I think it's been a difficult year for front offices. And I can assure you, it's been a difficult year for the league office. So where we started the year with a lot of optimism, I personally am ending the year with a lot of optimism. I feel like, I have hope that there is vaccines in the future. I have hope that we've learned a lot this year, and we'll figure out a way to go forward in a safe and a cautious manner. And I have hope that when we do return full throttle, that with the excitement around our sport, with the tailwind of the World Cup in 2026, and all the things that we have going for us for a league, that we'll pick up right where we left off.
Great stuff, Gary. We appreciate you taking the time, your insight into MLS this year, how the Sounders FC fit into the larger ecosystem of what's going on behind closed doors that we often don't get to see. We appreciate you taking the time to speak to us, especially on the East Coast. So enjoy a good evening. Best of luck through the playoffs, getting everything planned, and hopefully next year things get a little bit better. But in the meantime, let's take some questions. I know that there's a couple in there. Jerry, you can kind of fire away here.
First question, how does the league feel about some of the MLS teams playing home games with fans when most markets aren't permitted to do so right now?
Well, that's a good question, and we debate that all the time. Our decision is really a function of what the local municipality or the state governments allow in that particular state. So we think that our owners should follow the local rules. But if there are fans, there are certain protocols that the clubs must follow from the league And our clubs have been great about that. In fact, there have been about 4 markets that could have had fans, and they waited for 5 or 6 or 7 matches until they felt like they had a lot of reps locally before they introduced any fans into the match. So we generally leave that to local and state governments to make those decisions.
Jerry, got one more quick question.
The league TV deal is up in the near future. Can you talk about the next possible deal and what effect that could have on the future of the league?
Sure. So the league, all of our media agreements expire at the end of 2022. And we intentionally have every media agreement, all local agreements, all international agreements, our domestic agreements with Fox, Univision, and ESPN, everything expires at the same time, which we think will give us the most flexibility. Like I said earlier, we're optimistic because this is the last frontier for the world's largest sport. We're excited about having the World Cup. Our league is growing, so we're confident as we go into our new media rights, but we believe that it could have a big impact on our growth, and so we're excited to get started.
Great. Thank you, Gary. Appreciate the time answering some questions. Jerry, you only got to ask 2 questions, but there's always next time, Jerry. Thanks, guys. So next, you're going to hear from majority owner Adrian Hanauer. Hopefully he's teed up, ready to go. Adrian, who will welcome a new ownership little group into our family. You may have seen that on social media today. Adrian, thanks for joining us. Please take it away. You're muted, Adrian. Unmute yourself. There you go.
Unmuted a second time. I think I'm good. Yeah.
Yep.
So thanks a lot, Brad. And thank you to Gary Stevenson. I don't know if Gary's still around, but we wanted to get him to sleep on the East Coast. And, I think it's instructive, helpful, as Brad mentioned, to understand the whole structure, the league protocols, the league process for getting games going after COVID hit, and being the catalyst for what we did in the local markets. With such a massive emphasis on safety. So, we really couldn't have done what we are doing at the local level without that leadership at the league level. So that was a big part of where we're at today. So I wanted to just, say a few words. Peter, Maya, Garth, Brian will have a chance to add more depth later. But, I guess wanted to talk to all of you and first thank you for taking some time out of your busy and hectic lives to be with us. This has been an extraordinarily difficult year for all of us. Sounders no different, whether pandemic or the fight for social justice, lest we forget forest fires and an absurd election season. This has been a difficult year. And I didn't even mention murder hornets. So I think we will all be very happy to turn the page on 2020. I need to thank a lot of people just for helping get through this time, and we're not necessarily out of the woods, but again, beyond the league and their leadership, we have a fantastic ownership group with Sounders FC. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Drew. Drew had a last minute Price is Right emergency. They are filming. He was really sorry he couldn't be here tonight. Drew is such a believer in this process of democracy, and the Alliance Council, and what you all do, and how you hold our feet to the fire and push us and hold us accountable, as Gary mentioned. The estate of Paul Allen, Jody Allen, the rest of our owners. I have an executive committee that has been meeting regularly to help guide me and make sure that I've been okay through this process and this crazy year. So I really appreciate them. And as Brad mentioned, super excited to welcome the Griffey family into ownership today. If you read the release, again, this was one that was done a while ago, but we decided to wait to announce this. The Griffeys are huge supporters. Obviously, Seattle is deep in their roots. Melissa played soccer. Ken loves the game. His family loves the game. Obviously, they were at MLS Cup in 2019. Really enjoyed themselves, and they're thrilled to be part of the Sounders family now. I have to, thank, of course, the players, the coaches, all of the support on the team side who have persevered through this. Our management team within the Sounders and the Sounders staff, there've been a lot of sacrifices this year. There have, in fact, been layoffs. There have been furloughs, people on partial work, salary reductions, added workload and stress. And again, I am so appreciative everyone has sacrificed to help us get through to where we're at today. Our sponsors, our media partners who've, stuck with us and helped us get through the year. Seahawks, Vulcan, Starfire, and our neighbor franchises, the Mariners, Storm, Seahawks, all have come together to work to make this get us through this year, and of course a special thank you to our fans. Your commitment, devotion to the team is extraordinary. We are so appreciative, and the Alliance and Alliance Council, of course. I did want to put in one quick personal pitch that please be careful this holiday season. As Gary said, we're close on vaccines and therapies, but we've got a couple of months of digging in and trenching in to get us through to the other side. But we can see the light at the end of the tunnel. A few accomplishments and things that I'd like to recognize and positives maybe that I can point to from this last period of time. Obviously, early this year, we got to celebrate dropping a banner. It's almost hard to believe that, it was earlier this year that we were celebrating the 2019 MLS Cup championship and able to see those two stars on the jersey. So lots of work still left to do, but that was an amazing moment. We also welcomed the Lewicki family, obviously the Griffey family today. we really discovered how resilient and adaptable our entire Sounders family is. And we will, there will be positives that come out of this. It's hard to see them, but whether it's technologies, some of the ways, at least for us within the Sounders, trying to find that work-life balance, people working remotely, people being super productive working remotely. I'm sure that many of you in the same boat. And coming out the other end of this, we hope that we're able to provide a more balanced existence for our staff. The TV product that we've been able to push out, has been fantastic. We're able to continue to tell stories. The partnership with Joe TV, but also with Prime has been fantastic. We've added viewers this year in a year when most sports enterprise television viewing is down. Our viewership has been up a little bit, which is great. Again, our players and coaches have stepped up in the fight against COVID and in the fight against social justice in this country. So proud of them and their voices. You'll hear more specifics about that later on in the presentation. We obviously had a very quiet but emotional and important ring ceremony, where our players were able to, players and staff were able to be rewarded for their work last year. And obviously making the playoffs for the 12th straight season, absolutely incredible. The consistency that this team, this organization has continued to demonstrate over these years obviously makes me really proud. Our best days are in front of us. I think this dark period, again, maybe seeing the silver lining allows us to appreciate each other and this family a little bit more. And we just can't wait to see everyone at the stadium in 2021. So thank you again for all of your support, for being here. And I'm going to pass it off now and keep the evening moving.
Thanks, Adrian. We'll hear more from Adrian during the front office presentation, where he can answer some of your questions. For this section, make sure your question and answers are getting asked and answered. So please put them in the Q&A section. But we're going to hear directly from your elected representatives, the Alliance Council. Speaking on behalf of the council this evening is Cameron Collins, president of Alliance Council, and Carmen Hall, at large for Alliance Council. Take it away. Unmute yourself, Cameron. There we go.
Technology. We use it every day, and yet it still gets us. Hey, everybody. I am the Alliance Council president, and I'm super excited to be here with you tonight at what is one of the big things that we do every year, which is the Alliance Council, the Alliance business meeting. And this has been quite the year on Alliance Council, as it has been for everyone, where we've continued to grow our partnership with the club in a positive and meaningful way, and also adapting to this new reality. We'll hear more about that from Carmen Hall in a few minutes here, but I wanted to make sure to give a little bit more about what the Alliance Council is for those of you who may not know. So the council is really owner Drew Carey's notion of democracy in sports in action. We're a body of members made up of the Alliance, and that is all the season ticket holders of the club. So if you're here today watching, you're a member of the Alliance. We're the representative body for you. We become elected out of your body. We work closely with the club to ensure that the Sounders continue to have the best experience for soccer fans in North America. and we're your voice with the front office. I wanted to quickly go over how you became a member if anyone is interested. Become a member of the council, you need to nominate yourself for a 2-year term at vote.soundersfc.com and then get 25 alliance members to vote for you. I do want to note that votes reset at the beginning of the council year, which is December. And so you probably want to wait until after December, beginning of December, if you would like to run and join us, which we would love to have you. So far this year, we've had 10 council members, including myself, be reelected for council. And we also have 2 new members, Scott Chupak and Tim Hamilton, who will be joining us for next year. We always want to be more representative of the Sounders fan base. So if you want to come join us, please do. We could use your energy. We could use your ideas. Before I pass it off to Carmen, though, I wanted to make sure to shout out our current council for all the hard work they've done in this absolutely crazy year under really difficult circumstances. Our executive committee this year was made up of Kelsey Gallo as vice president and Nicholas Biela as secretary. Ben Slager and Carmen Hall served as at-large members of the executive committee, and the body was made up of Lisa Angelis, Alex Eagleton, Darla Langdon, Jerry Neal, Richard Oliver, Daniel Rowe, Stephanie Steiner, Jeff Williams, and Dwayne Nakamura. I want to give a special shout out to Dwayne for his exceptional work in making tonight's annual business meeting possible. He really led the efforts from the council standpoint, and we wouldn't be here today without him. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Carmen to talk about the 2020 council year and a review of that and a look ahead to 2021.
Thanks, Cameron. I think I got myself off mute. I've done it in like 3 places, so I should be good. Is anyone tired of hearing that yet with the Zoom calls we're all on? The bingo card, that's the free space in the middle. So the 2020 year in review, really a mix of business as usual and some new opportunities that we adjusted to for COVID. We hit our normal key activities for the year. The Alliance Scarf vote, that's still something we're really proud of. We think it's such a unique opportunity for our club to have that feedback and to have that fan-sourced, supporter-sourced piece of pride. One of the things I'm missing this year a lot is seeing all those scarves in the stadium. The 2022 seems so far away. Jersey design. We participate with the front office and Adidas in offering ideas, offering suggestions, and some feedback. It's a really neat way to be involved to all the extents we get to be involved. I think that there's plenty of articles out there about Adidas and how they manage that process, but you have a voice in that through us. It was a little harder this year with Rave Foundation support. Normally we try and support the activities that they're doing a bit more. Before the entire country went to lockdown, we got to go to the Rave Gala, and that was a huge fundraising and real fun celebration of the Rave Foundation. The second really critical thing that Rave did this year was participate in the COVID-19 Relief Fund. The Alliance was represented and Alliance Council were represented by Cameron on that committee. And over the course of that initiative, they gave away more than $1.1 million to 134 different businesses and almost 800 different individuals, including some nonprofits. I think we all can be proud of the way that our club supports the community, especially in these times. And it's really neat to be a part of that and to get to have input on how we do that. We continued over Zoom meetings with ownership and front office employees. We found out that Adrian has trained his kid pretty good to press the red button when he's done. Everyone knows what that means. But it was great to use technology and still get to hear what's going on, hear how the players and the coaching staff are adapting to the COVID-19 restrictions. That kind of access is awesome. And then of course, here we are with the annual business meeting. This is sort of the cherry on top at the end. I'm gonna shout out again to Dwayne for all of the cat wrangling he did here. Thanks, Dwayne, we put you through it sometimes. Hopefully people find this valuable, and hopefully, someday sooner than later, we all get to be back together again when we do this. COVID really gave us 2 unique opportunities for new things this year. First, we had to go virtual, not something that the Alliance Council has done before, and that even included updating some of our bylaws to be able to do elections next year, month. It's all the same right now. So we adapted in that way, but we're really excited about the Zoom watch parties that we did with some of you Alliance folks in conjunction with MLS and in conjunction with the Sounders front office. Alliance Council, Sounders, and Gorilla FC all partnered together during the MLS's back tournament in Orlando. Great opportunity. We continued those during the regular season and we're continuing them into the playoffs. So keep an eye on our social media and look for those updates coming out for the next match, first match of the playoffs next week. We've gotten really great feedback that it helps people stay connected and feel connected. That's really hard to do during this time of year. So we're excited that we were able to do that and bring people together. 2021. What does back to normal look like? We don't know. Nobody knows. We're all excited to get back in the field and back into CenturyLink with you all. And we'll be working with the front office as we can to help support that. In the meantime, we'll continue to try and do outreach and make sure everyone's included and we keep as much of our community together as we can. 50th anniversary is in 2024. We're probably going to start brainstorming some ideas. I don't know about you, but 50 seems like a lot for a club. We have some paperwork to do. We've got some constitution and bylaws updates. We put those off a little bit, but we realized that, like this year, we need to modernize a bit. So we'll be going through and doing just some legal paperwork. Cameron likes that stuff a lot. There's people who love it. If you love it, come be on council with us. And then, of course, whatever other initiatives our Alliance Council members submit. That's one of the great things about this. If you have an idea, you get to make it part of the club. In the past, we've done things like accessibility and concessions and even looked at travel packages. So if there's something that you think is interesting and something you think we should be talking about, then come join us. Cameron mentioned it. It's been pitched a couple of times. Our business year for 2021 starts December 1st. Start gathering your goats. If you want your goats, get your goats in line. If you want more information on democracy and sports in general, you can hit that URL and you can always find us at Alliance Council on Twitter and Facebook. We try and be pretty responsive. You don't have to bring a goat, but if you show me a goat picture, I'm more likely to respond back. Brad, I think that was our presentation. Do we have questions?
I love it. Yeah. So yeah, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. So Cameron and Carmen are going to take some questions right now. We've got fellow Alliance Council member, Nicholas Biela. Nicholas, I know there's a couple in there, so ask away.
Yeah, thank you so much. So first question is going to be, why not have a big screen in the north lot for drive-in viewing party? If San Jose can pull it off, I know Seattle Sounders can.
That is a great idea and one that we don't have an answer to, but that's a great question. I think that we've talked about, I think maybe, you know what, I don't know. I'd be making something up. So why don't we say we'll take that back. We'll talk to the folks on this call and we'll see if that's an option for us.
That's the beautiful thing about the Alliance Council is we have a direct line to the club. And so we can take that feedback directly to them and get to the bottom of it.
Yep.
Okay. Can you explain further the process behind the scarf vote being in black and white?
Yes. I think that we had a little bit of a miss where we didn't call that out as clearly as we should have. So some people were surprised when they gave colors in. We're really excited about next year's jersey, and we would like to tie in some of those cool elements and have the scarf feel like it's a part of your 2021 ensemble. I think that we got a lot of feedback about the 2020 scarf that didn't feel like, some people didn't feel like it necessarily fit the Sounders, and it, I liked the black and white, but this is more of a conscious effort to tie something that we think is really cool in. Cameron, anything that you'd add there?
Yeah, I think once once everyone sees the result, they'll be super happy.
Okay. finally, what advice would you give to anyone listening currently who's interested in joining the Alliance Council?
Do it.
Do it.
Yeah. You don't, if the things that are stopping you is that you think you don't have something valuable to bring, then you're wrong, because the most valuable thing you bring is you and your perspective, and the fact that you like the club and you like soccer and you're committed enough to want to spend your time this way shows that you're exactly the kind of person that we would want. I haven't regretted a minute of it. I'm finishing up my second year in my first term, and I'm re-upped for the next 2 years. So yeah, do it.
Yeah, do it. I've been on council since 2013 in many different capacities, and the new energy is always needed, and we love having more people. So if you have any questions, you can reach out to any council member or to any, even the club will send you our direction. But absolutely, the only thing that is stopping you is the fact that you haven't gone to vote.soundersfc.com and nominated yourself yet. So go nominate yourself.
Love it. Thank you guys. Nicholas, Carmen, Cameron, thanks for taking the time. We'll now hear from General Manager, President of Soccer, Garth Lagerwey, and good old Brian Schmetzer somewhere in here too. So if you guys come on here, cue you up. And if you guys have questions for Garth or Brian, make sure you leave them in the Q&A section. Garth, unmute yourself, and then we'll get Schmetz, I'm sure. There he is. Bottle of wine in hand. Let's see. I'm sure. Yeah, he'll figure it out. Garth, right. you want to take it away?
Yeah, we'll get started here.
There you go.
There's Coach Schmetzer. There we go.
Come on, Brad. Come on, really? You don't think I'm technically advanced?
You are technically advanced. It takes you a little longer than most people.
And my internet speed is slow here at the house. That's what it is.
Takes.
My screen's way better than your two screens. My screen's way better than your two screens anyway. You guys, I mean, let's go. I'm ready to go.
With that enthusiastic launch, I'll try to jump through a little quick review, and I'll turn it over to Brian, and then he and Brad can go back and forth the rest of the night. It has been an unusual year. Gary and Adrian really framed the issue, I think, in terms of COVID and all the challenges we faced. I want to start off with a big thank you to our medical team, led by Chris Cornish and Dr. Norson, Dr. Morris. They've been incredible in terms of supporting the team and in terms of keeping everybody safe. The amount of work that's gone into protocols across the club, and equally as responsible, Sheila Tatsunami, who took care of all of our folks from the player development side of things. So those guys have really been amazing at keeping us safe, and we really appreciate all their efforts. As far as player development, obviously that's been a big part of this, and we've signed a number of the players to the first team, and a couple more this year, Shandon and Josh most recently. But unfortunately, it's been a tough year for player development. It's been really difficult. The academy has not been able to play games since March. And right now we are, we trained in cohorts for a long time, and are still limited in terms of what we can do, and have to train in mass now to comply with the governor's new order. So we're doing the best we can, and we'll continue to keep pushing some of these kids forward. We continue to sign some of the kids to Defiance. Reed Baker Whiting was signed there. Eric Kinsner, Sota Kitahara, all guys that joined the Defiance pipeline from our academy in the last 12 months. So excited about what the long-term future brings, even if 2020 has kind of been a bummer overall for our academy. For Defiance, the story isn't that different, unfortunately. We were able to play a season through the USL. And again, those guys just kind of shouldered all burdens. Big credit to Henry Bronner and Chris Little and Wade Weber for keeping the ship afloat. We asked them to go at one point on, I believe, an 11-game road trip because Cheney Stadium wasn't available due to baseball's adjustments to their COVID restrictions. So it really has been a long haul. Those guys were just kind of pushed through it all season long and continue to get good experiences for Defiance kids, and then also for kids like Alfonso Campo Chavez and Ethan Doubleair, who we were able to send down there to get some minutes. So again, a difficult year, but hopefully more good stuff to come from Defiance as we will be part of USL in 2021 again. The one big addition we made from a staffing perspective, well, couple additions, but the one with respect to player development was John Hutchinson, and I think he was really instrumental in terms of building a bridge. John had formerly been the Defiance coach at the time. It was S2, but with that experience, he was able to come in and I think really relate to what these kids needed to do to become first team pros. And he was able to build that bridge, and he's done a great job for us this year. The other big new hire we had this year was Adam Owen, who I think has also done a tremendous job and was instrumental, I think, in particular in phase 3 in terms of getting our guys able to play on short rest over and over and over again as we went on the stretch run to the playoffs. So quick little overview, and then I promise I'll kick it over to Brian, and he can go into more depth with respect to the first team. But it's really been 3 different seasons. It's been pretty strange that way. We started off, made a commitment to signing a 3rd designated player in João Paulo, and really tried to go all in on Champions League, and that was a failure. We got knocked out in the first round, and didn't get off to the start that we wanted. We then came back and played the Disney tournament, and had a number of guys hurt. It was a really tough preseason environment, really difficult to get the guys trained up to a point where they were resilient. Adam has a great philosophy, and it took us, I think, a little bit of time to get used to it. And all of that combined to what was a pretty tough slog again in Disney and a struggle. But then it all kind of came good. All the investments we'd made, all the time we'd put in, all the work that the players had done on the field, training with all these unusual circumstances, and then the final phase and the 3rd phase, we really took off, and we're able to play consistently pretty well. We're able to get 23 games in by the end of the season. 22. But really, that was itself kind of a remarkable achievement that we were able to get almost 2/3 of the season in, considering where we started and how choppy and stop-start it was. So credit to the coaches, credit to the players, credit to the staff just for getting through the season, because it was an incredible roller coaster in terms of stress and pressure and congested schedule, and just having to overcome one thing after another. And it finished with us in the 2 seed. And I think we now head in the playoffs, and we have LAFC in our first game, and they are a formidable opponent, loaded with good players. And I think it bears saying that we haven't played LAFC at full strength this year. So it's really going to be a tricky game, and we're going to be up for it. We're going to be ready. And hopefully it'll pay off for all the work that's come so far this season. But with that, Brian, I will turn it over to you.
Thanks, Garth. Brad, any time constraints? Because you know me, I can talk forever. I mean, I know people want to get back to their dinner hour, but do I have any?
No,
time?
you're good. You're good.
I'm good.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, lots of positivity there from Garth. I'm gonna piggyback on some of that. Adrian in his opening remarks, positive. I will get into some of the realities, though. I'll promise you, I'm pretty pragmatic German, so I'll get to the stuff. November 10th last year was great. March of the match, the Sounders put out a bunch of social media reminders. That was a great day in Sounders history, in Seattle history, and it was one of those great sports moments, like Griffey and the Yankees and the Sonics back in '95, and the Seahawks win an NFL championship. That was up there, in my opinion, as one of those great moments in sports history. The guys that cover those great moments in sports history, some of the guys on the media here, I'm watching you guys' Twitter accounts as this goes on, and I hope that I'll get positive reviews. Okay, make sure, Jeremiah, I'm listening, I'm paying attention. I also want to, I always say this to media and other people when I'm on these Zoom calls, we're in the cone of silence. Whatever I say can't go out in the media too much. If you want to know about Brad's injury, he's healthy. He trained in full today. So that's a great thing. The team has done an exceptional job of overcoming adversity. We had a positive test case within the staff here earlier in the week. Chris Cornish, I want to echo Garth's comments there. Our whole medical staff, Adrian touched on it earlier as well. They did a tremendous job keeping us safe. Even in the bubble at MLS, I did feel safe. I know there was some chatter early on from Sounder fans. Should we go? Should we not? What's safe? You know, I really did feel safe in the bubble. And I feel safe here in Seattle. I understand that COVID's all over and it's going to affect all of us. It's affecting all of us now. But, you know, with our protocols in place, I'm currently pretty pleased with what's going on. Touching on some of the big stuff. I mean, obviously LAFC, formidable opponent, like Garth says, but we're not afraid. We're at home. We're the Seattle freaking Sounders. We can do this. We understand how they play. Look, Bob's a great coach. Bob is not going to change how he plays. So we have a pretty good idea what's going to happen. And to use a Coach Carroll phrase, I mean, the team that makes the most plays on Tuesday is a team that's going to come out ahead. Because in our games with LAFC, in the games that we've won, we have, you know, scored goals and made plays defensively, offensively, and all of that. And in some of the games that we didn't take a result from LAFC, we had some, you know, some defending breakdowns. We had some things that we could have done better. And, you know, you have to give your opponent some credit at times as well. So, you know, that's going to be I would think the marquee game of one of the first rounds of the playoffs, certainly on the West Coast side. So all eyes are watching on us, the Sounders. We'll get the team prepared. I know the team, they'll be ready. They'll be up for it. You know, Garth touched on player development, and that's certainly a big topic, not just for the Seattle Sounders, MLS, but all over the world. And so my thoughts about, you know, player development are pretty simple. Now, I'll probably use it in 3 different age groups. So when they're younger, 12, 13, 14, I mean, the kids just need to play. There's too many kids these days that are on their cell phones, their video games, social media. I mean, they just need to go out and play more, you know, get out in the field, the trainings, and, you know, just kick the ball around with their friends. I know it's hard now with COVID, but, you know, once we get past this, you know, kids need to develop. Technical proficiency is much easier at 12, 13, and 14 than it is when you get 18, 19, 20, 21. So all the young kids are just playing games, small-sided games. They get a lot of development at those ages. When you get into the age 15, 16, 17, that's when things get a little bit more serious. That's when kids can really bear down and say, okay, yeah, I'm going to make a decision. I want to be a pro soccer player. And so what kind of training environment do the Seattle Sounders, our academy and Defiance and the first team, you know, what kind of training environment do we give to the kids to increase their chances of making it? Well, I'll give you an example. Garth touched it. Reed Baker Whitting, 15-year-old kid. And after Defiance season was over, we brought him up to the first team, and he really has developed really nicely because he's had that taste of that really competitive, high-end training environment. Josh Atencio, again, with COVID, it's great if we could have had the kids go up for the Sounders trainings and then play meaningful games in Defiance. That's the way we had things set up. It didn't happen that way. You know, through COVID, we couldn't, you know, bring players back and forth. Well, Josh Atencio actually was a beneficiary of, you know, being in our training environment, and his improvement was really good, really tremendous. So we got to try and get back to the balance there. I want the kids to taste our training environment. They need to play meaningful games. So helping us do that is John Hutchison. Garth, you were absolutely correct. He was phenomenal for us. He was a really good guy, a little bit of an old school mentality, which I liked. So we got along well. You know, and then the final piece is just up to the players. You know, it's their mentality, their determination, their perseverance. You know, my standard for the club is very, very high. I take this job very, very seriously. And so their opportunity comes every day in training and in games, whether it's Defiance or the first team. Those kids have an unbelievable opportunity to be involved with the best team in MLS. And we hold a high standard, and we're going to hold our kids to a high standard and hopefully develop some of these kids so that they can take place in meaningful minutes for our club. And then finally, in closing, I just want to say that I am happy. I'd love to be a Sounder for life. And I know there were some questions that were coming up in social media out and about my contract and all that. Really hope that something happens with this club. Because if you look at my background, that's what I want to see again. A full stadium, championship game. Those are the days that I want to reflect on when I'm, Brad, back in my older years, drinking a glass of wine. Yes, I'm going to look back at those moments and say, yes, it's really a great day to be a Sounder.
Love it. Brian, Garth, thanks for the insights, the updates, and the future outlook. Jerry, I know that there's a couple questions. It shot up from like 10 questions before to now we've got 31 total. So nice shirt, and ask away.
Today it was reported that the MLS players on international duty might be available for playoffs if they return via chartered flights. Are the Sounders pursuing that avenue so that we could get all our international players back sooner?
Yes, we are pursuing it, as is, I think, every MLS team in the league that's in the playoffs. So there is a lot of nuance around it. And I understand this is an article that just hit and reporting that's out there. We've been working on this for a week. But suffice to say that any national team that's reported positive cases in their camps, that's a complicating factor because we have to make sure that we're protecting the rest of our team in terms of any players that would be returning to join us. So it's not just our players that are abroad we have to worry about. Certainly, we're very concerned with them and their health and well-being, but we have to make sure that their teammates and their families are protected on their way back as well. So we're working on it, and we'll see what happens, and we'll know the results by the end of the week.
This will be a question for Coach. With COVID now and us having all our players and teams in bubbles, how are the players adapting to being quarantined more and still staying positive? What's kind of the day in the life of a player like right now?
Well, it's a great question, whoever asked it, because, look, soccer, they love playing the game. They love being out in the field, the grass, their buddies, they play, it's competitive, it's what they do. But what we've really kind of honed in on is actually their mental state of mind and how do they feel safe? I mean, do they feel safe, fighting, tackling against other people when they don't know if they have COVID or not? There's a mental part to this issue that certainly happens to all of us, but it happens to the players. So we've been trying to do a good job of messaging that it's almost impossible, very rare. I think the NFL had an article out the other day about how there's no transmission of COVID between players. And so we try and reassure them that it's going to be okay. And then the messaging from, again, all our doctors and medical staff, Chris, everybody, myself, is let's just be smart, common sense. Let's make sure we do the right things. Wear your mask, okay? Social distance, make sure Thanksgiving, like Adrian said, I mean, if you can sacrifice that, maybe postpone it or, just delay it for a year. All of those common sense things are going to help us in the long
run. And then the next question for Garth, with scouting kind of being a little bit difficult with COVID, how are you adapting to, scouting potential players or maybe outbound players?
Yeah, you do the best you can. As Coach Spencer said, we all have to adjust and adapt. And, just as the players have to literally change what they do every single day in terms of, how they prepare for training and how they train, we in the front office have to adjust as well. There's always been an analytics component to our scouting, and Ravi Remendy heads that up. I think he's the best analyst in the league. You still have Chris Henderson in charge of all of our talent identification. Again, I think he's the best in the league at what he does. We have some tools where we can watch every touch of every player anywhere in the world at our beck and call. So there's a ton of stuff that we can do on video. Obviously, that in-person component is still something that we'd love to have. And look, if you looked at our transfer window in the fall, we were, part of it was we had been aggressive in the beginning of the year, as I relayed, and had spent most of our money. But, in Brad Smith and Roman Torres, the players we brought back in the second window were guys that we knew pretty well. So I do think all things equal, we'll be a little bit more conservative probably in that first window in terms of making big changes. But that's also because so far the team's done well. Obviously, we hope and see how we do in the playoffs, and we'll measure ourselves against the high standard that we set. But if we can be successful with this group, we're going to keep as many of them around as possible.
And then one final question, it could be for the both of you. We have a good solid group of homegrown players on the roster right now. What's the plan for further development to get even more of them up on the first team and development in general?
Yeah, look, a lot of this is just staying the course. It's just over time, can you give more and more kids opportunities? And, I think we're up to seven now, maybe on the first team. And it becomes less about two. I mean, if you think about who was our best homegrown player last year, it was Danny Leva. But Danny broke his foot and he missed 3 months. And it was a really unfortunate timing, and combined with the fact that we couldn't move guys between teams, as Coach Smetzer articulated. It's been a challenging year. And so somebody like, Coach talked about Josh Atencio stepping up, and Shannon Hopiau, these are little moments, right? So Shannon gets a couple minutes at the end of the Portland game, hustle play, right? Doesn't give up on a ball, knocks the ball out off the Portland defender. We get a corner kick, Will Bruin knocks it in, we equalize. And guess what? That's literally the difference between being seeded second and seeded third. So because that 1 point mattered, I think we beat Portland in points per game by 1/10 of a point or thereabouts. So, it may not be that we have one player that comes in like Jordan Morris in his rookie year and takes the league by storm. But I am confident that we're going to continue to have a lot of good players matriculate to the first team, and all these kids are now going to compete, right? I mean, at the beginning of the year, I wouldn't have guessed that Ethan Doubleair would have been ready to come in and really have a good shift and to play again with another young player. We've had 2 other young players emerge, right? We don't think of them as homegrowns, but Nuhu Tolo, Alex Roldan, both had their best years of their careers, right? And so it's the progress of development overall that we're really trying to emphasize and continue on the path of. And again, credit to the players for continuing to work, credit to the staff for continuing to find ways to work them in and to work with them and to help them grow and improve. And so it's really a collective effort, and we're going to keep working together to make it happen.
Schmitz, you want to add to that at all?
I think Garth said it pretty eloquently.
Yep.
I mean, you're always thinking of different ways to try and drive performance of the first team. We're also thinking about additional ways how we fine tune and make the development process better. I think with Hutch's signing, I think that was a good signing. But nuts and bolts are, the young players can work harder than some of the older guys. And, we had double sessions planned with first team coaches, and all of those little details are going to help us get more, young players up within the group. But what I'd warn people about is, look, it's not easy. It's not every day that you get a DeAndre Yedlin, Jordan Morris. Brendan Aronson is a good example of the newest wave of a kid that came up through an organization, has done pretty well. Those aren't that easy. If you look at, Garth's former team, RSL, good reputation of getting young players there, certainly FC Dallas, New York Red Bull. There are some teams that have had success, but if you really dig down into all of Dallas's homegrowns, the more you get, the bigger problem you have. You got to make sure you find playing time for them. But then if they don't make it, where do they go? How can we sell them on? So I know Garth and Chris Henderson are doing a good job of trying to figure out ways how this whole complex issue is being run to level that we believe it should be run at here at the Sound.
Perfect. We'll cap it there. For all the other questions, I think that these guys are going to try and get around to answer some of those on the back end. But Garth, Brian, thank you. Jerry, thanks for the questions. Good luck on Tuesday, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
Thanks, Brad. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Brad.
All right, everyone. You've gotten to hear from MLS, Alliance Council, the soccer side with these two, and the business. Now you'll hear directly from Sounders FC ownership, leadership regarding the business side. So to start, we welcome back Adrian Hanauer, majority owner, Peter Tomazawa, tongue twister for some reason right now,
No
president
problem.
of Sounders FC. and Maya Mendoza, SVP of Legal and External Affairs, to just speak about the season. Thanks, guys, and take it away, Peter. Or Adrian.
Great.
Or
Oh,
Maya.
Adrian, did you want to keep going, or you want to?
No, that's you,
Okay.
Peter.
All right, sounds great. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. This is my second annual business meeting, so appreciate the opportunity. And we're talking to Gary Stevenson prior to getting on air tonight, and he had stated that this was such a unique opportunity and really appreciated it because no other team in the league does this, and this is our 12th. So kudos to the Alliance Council. You know, I have never been to an Alliance Council meeting where we haven't come out with a great idea. You know, last September 2019 was my very first Alliance Council meeting. And Cameron, I'm going to give you guys a big commercial here and a shout out. But Nicholas, you and Jerry Neal came up with the idea of we should have a Sounders Passport product, a product that, you know, basically could be a very cheap get in the door type of product. Great way to do a season ticket for somebody that has a budget constraint, and pointed out several examples of success with this type of product. And guess what? We launched it in December of 2019. So these are ideas. We love ideas. You know, just heard one about the drive-in the viewing party in the North Lot, maybe. We have looked at some of these kind of ideas, but one of the kind of themes that I think you've heard on this call so far has been safety. And so we've taken everything that we've thought of and then put the lens of how can we do this the safest possible way. And the other lens we take on all of this is responsibility. You know, we took our very seriously last March when COVID had first hit. We had actually put together a COVID response team back in February, thinking that this might be something. Of course, we never dreamed it was going to be something as dramatic as it turned out to be. But we had already prepared a network and had already gotten out to the health officials, the King County Health. We talked to a number of different folks all in and all around the league, the different leagues. And so whilst no one can ever really claim to be fully prepared for what was about to come, we were very, very confident that we were making the safest decisions possible for all of you. And we take that responsibility very, very seriously. One of the things that I want to say going forward is that we'll continue to be doing that, is taking the idea of safety and responsibility as key drivers. But one of the things that we have been iterating towards and really working toward is the idea of creating serious season ticket member value. And that's just not part of being part of Alliance Council, although I encourage everyone on this call to really consider being part of this great institution, which is the Alliance Council, which allows you really to get sort of inside baseball look at kind of like how a sports team is run. I think you'd all agree, all the members on the Alliance Council, about kind of that special relationship you can build with our club. But the idea of creating value was something that sort of permeates throughout every part of our organization. And I think no better example of that was the 2019 MLS Cup. One of the, I guess, highest or best criticisms that we received was that the season ticket members got too good of a deal for the MLS Cup, and we took that with a badge of honor and a badge of pride that we actually took care of our season ticket members first. And to that end, you know, when the season was put on ice in March, we sat then and said, what are we going to do? We're going to double down and invest into our season ticket members. And just to give you sort of an example and some numerics around this, because I know our team loves numerics, Adrian loves numerics, you know, Garth and Bart loves numerics. We have this thing that we measure: how often do we contact our season ticket members? And we call it our touch point campaign. and there's a fellow named Aaron Lampkin who runs our ticketing department, and he ran some numbers for me. In 2019, we had 42,300 touch points. That's the number of times we've actually reached out and called a season ticket member, and that was from March into November period. Same period this year, 2020, we've had 66,072 touch points. So we've clearly gone out and contacted and been in touch with all of you as much as we possibly can with a reduced amount of staff, but nonetheless focusing on each and every one of you. Discussions about how you're doing, to things about like what's happening with the season, and just reaching out and trying to be more and more involved with all of you. The last, what was it, 2 Alliance Council member meetings ago, one of the things that we thought about in terms of creating value for our season ticket members was actually closing the upper deck. That was a big thing for us. We've been considering that for the last couple of years just because of the sort of supply demand equation. But the real driver of this was, how do we create more value for our season ticket members? How do we create a better experience at the stadium? And we did understand, and we did talk to a number of people about, what it was going to take and what it was going to do. We talked to people from the NFL who have done relocations. We've talked to people in the NHL. We've talked to a number of people, people across our own league, and try to take all the best examples of how we might be able to pull this off and do it in a way that we could actually give our season ticket members priority, and figure out the best way to create and drive that value. And we did receive some criticism, and looking back in hindsight, that we didn't give enough time for our 815 members that had season tickets upstairs in the 300 section to collect or select their tickets for the relocation. But the truth was we actually created a priority for those members, and we wanted to slot that in before any of the other relocations that were going to be open. And so we chose to do that. Maybe in hindsight, we could have chose to delay the regular relocation a little longer, but you live and you learn on these kind of things. But at the end of the day, 96% of the people that were relocated were quite satisfied with what we did. But having said that, a couple Alliance Council meetings ago, Daniel Rowe and Dwayne Nakamura, who Dwayne's got a lot of press time on tonight, but they made a great suggestion, and that was, they are 2 people that had 300 level seats, and so we were quite keen to hear what they had to say about it. And they both made the great suggestion that, should we open up the upper deck anytime in the future, would we please consider giving the 300 level members some sort of priority to get upstairs, to get their tickets upstairs or get back upstairs, and in terms of open bowl games. And of course, what we've gone back now and said, yes, we're going to do that. So should we ever have some games in the future where the upper bowl is open, then those people that gave up their seats to move downstairs will have priority. And so that is the value of something like the Alliance Council, in my opinion, that they bring us ideas. They bring us ideas on ticketing products. They bring us ideas on things like the drive-in in the North Lot, things that we should be considering. And that's really one of the beautiful things, I think, that was really very much in line with Drew Carey's version of what democracy in sports is all about. One of the things that I was asked to talk about is sort of like, what have we learned through this year in sort of the COVID environment. And one of the things that we did find out, and we're very comfortable with now, is that we found out that we can really work from home and get our jobs done. Now, that's not unique. Many companies have figured that out, but it was a big question mark for us and how we might be able to pull that off. And we feel very, very confident that we can, going forward, work from home and be very, very efficient. By not being able to have fans in stands, however, presented a huge problem for us because, obviously we give up the game day revenue on that, and which is significant. So now our product becomes more of a broadcast product. But we did a lot of, and I think Gary mentioned this in his speech, experimentation of things that we were looking at to do, but that's sort of accelerated due to COVID. Things like virtual signage that we've now figured out how to do, and sort of look at our broadcast product as a way to be the vehicle to communicate with all of you. And Brad Evans is a big part of that. But we went to a 3-man booth with Casey, Keith, and Steve Zakwani, and the reviews have been fantastic. One of the things that I would say is a hallmark of this year is the Amazon deal, the Amazon streaming deal. Many of you were like anxiously on us about, when are you going to come up with a streaming partner? And I don't think we disappointed anybody by announcing that Amazon Prime was our streaming partner. And that has been a fabulous, fabulous addition. I think I gotta believe, I'm going to say this, maybe it's hyperbole, but we're one of the few clubs that can actually announce a major partnership like this in a year like this. So very proud of the work that our team did to make that deal happen. And now we've got this really hallmark streaming partner out there, and our ability to continue to deliver value, not just to season ticket members, but to our sponsors, has been driving us all year long. Next year, I think you're going to find, and when we get to that stadium, we're going to have the digital ticketing. We're going to be working with our partners at the stadium, with Levi, in terms of figuring out how to do touchless purchases, and just sort of working with all that whole concept, as I initially talked about, with safety key on top of mind. And this is how we're going to continue to do a better service and try to continue to deliver that value to all of you. And so we're working hard with the stadium to align systems, to align processes. Maya's done a tremendous job, and she's been really kind of our czar on protocol for safety. We're just not going to sacrifice that part of it. And everything that we're going to do is going to be our number one thing and top of mind. Happy to take questions that any of you may have. Certainly open to suggestion, as we've said. I would be remiss in not calling out Michaela Purvis. She worked with Dwayne to put this whole thing together, and we appreciate the opportunity to speak with all of you and give you some of our thoughts or some of our insights, and happy to take some other questions that you may have.
Maya, do you want to jump in?
Thanks, Brad. Thanks, Peter. The only things I would add, we've focused a lot tonight on the things we've done this year to stay safe inside the team, to be able to put on matches in a fanless environment. And I think, the question for all of us, who desire to go out and back into the world is when we can go back to CenturyLink Field and be together. And, I wish, and if somebody out there has a crystal ball, maybe Dwayne, you have a crystal ball, that can help us with when that will be. I will echo what Adrian said. I mean, we and what Coach said, we have a road to hoe in front of us in terms of community spread right now in Seattle and Washington State. And one of the things I'm most thankful for through this process is something that Adrian mentioned earlier. But if anything, it has strengthened our relationship with our compatriots at the Mariners, at the Seahawks, the Storm, at the Reign, even at the Seawolves, and oh, by the way, the Kraken, who are coming online next year. There is a cohort of dedicated individuals that meets with the governor's office and with King County Public Health and with the city on a weekly basis, and has done since we were in the heart of this thing this summer. It's actually being spearheaded by the Seattle Sports Commission. And, you know, for those of you who are lovers of Seafair, the Seattle Sports Commission is now headed by Beth Knox, who's the former CEO of Seafair for many years. And I think one of the things about Seattle that makes it unique is that we still are a really small community when it comes to some of these things. And there is sort of that bat signal button of the event community, of the theater community, and of the sports community. And we are sharing best practices. We are working collaboratively to think about what fans might look like in the stadium, and in all of our venues might look like next year. And I think, you know, I would reiterate what Peter said. Our biggest priority is safety, 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 safety. And that's not only your safety, you know, in terms of fans, but also the safety of all of the people that have to come into the building to support those fans. We don't think about it, but all of those ushers that might also have, they might be moonlighting as ushers at the stadium, but are teachers. And so we want to make sure that the entire community is safer as a result of the efforts that we put in. And we are collaborative with our compatriots across the street at T-Mobile Park, because some of those people that are ushers for us are ushers at WAMU Theater and ushers in T-Mobile Park for Mariners. And I'm sure they will work for the Kraken and other venues as they come back online. And we have to think about not only that safety experience, but also the ease of operation for all of you to come to the stadium, to feel safe to come to the stadium, to want to come back to the stadium. You know, and I think the really exciting thing is that we are in a system, or in a series of evolution in technology right now in our industry, in all industries, and in adjacent industries. And one of those things that we will be able to capitalize on is that technology, is that acceleration of sort of the engagement in which that we have through a mobile device to get you into the building, to allow you to buy a concession, to allow you to know if it's safe to go to the bathroom. You know, the sky is the limit right now, and those types of technologies are evolving in real time. You know, and we want that user experience to be something that is safe, accessible, and is, quite honestly, you know, in sort of concert with the user experience that all of us will have in all of Seattle, in all of our lives, in a post-COVID-19 crisis world. And so we're really thankful for that collaboration. And, you know, I know it's a little bit unsatisfactory. I wish we had a better answer of how and when, but all of those things you're reading about other markets, you know, in terms of how many seats we put together, and where you do it, and whether you strike an aisle, and do you keep the whole place open, and how do you manage timed ingress, and will you have to sign an attestation, and will you have to take a test? Those are all factors in this huge cauldron, really. And the bottom line is the safest and the most efficient, user-friendly experience is what we are all aiming for. And we will mine our resources in collaboration with our partners in this city to make sure that fans of not only Sounders FC, but of every event and activation have an opportunity to come back next year when we get on the other side of this thing.
Thanks, Maya. Adrian, you want to close it out for this group?
You know, look, I think Maya and Peter have handled it fantastically. I don't have a lot to add, but happy to answer lots of questions now.
Okay, all right, fire away. Stephanie, I think Stephanie's in here to ask some questions from the Q&A. There she is.
Yeah, so first of all, I want to say thank you. I've done this many times now, and it's not any less special or important now than it has been in the past. So we really appreciate you. You saw the preloaded questions, and I think you've answered most of them, because most of them were about when can we come back, and how is the stadium going to be managed, and you can't answer those questions. But we did get a really interesting question from Polly, and Polly has attended many of these meetings in person, so I think you've probably met her and shaken her hand a couple of years. And it's specific to the vaccine, and when we have a vaccine, and of course we got some good news this week, and good news is going to come, and it's going to go, and people are going to react differently as it ebbs and it flows. Could you shed some light on how your group, with all these different sports teams and events teams, what kind of conversations are there about the possibilities of screening people as they come into the stadium? What does that conversation even look like for us?
It is a constant conversation, Stephanie, of unknown unknowables. I think those are all absolutely relevant factors, and all of us literally come to those conversations with different information. And that's, honestly, the beauty of it is it's the data dump and the data share. I think as we evolve out of this thing, the other factor in this is that the state and our local county officials have thought a lot about what reopening looks like. They've thought a lot about what, certainly, obviously, we've heard news this week about what a preliminary deployment schedule of prioritization might look like for vaccines when they're made available. But they've also started the work on the back end to help advise and guide businesses, all of us, to reopen, right? And I think that one of the notes I would strike is we are having conversations of convergence and consistency. Like, the idea is to get to a place where we have as much consistency as possible. I think if you ask any lawyer out there right now who operates any business, none of us want any extra data that we shouldn't have on any person, right? Like, that is just not a world we want to live in. There may be some obligations we have in contact tracing. There may be some requirements we have from risk management or from our insurance companies that we can't exactly forecast how all of those things are going to materialize. But what we're trying to get to in our conversations are shared best practices, some ideas about how we might approach these conversations, and this is where we do look to our left and look to our right, maybe more than we look to some of our compatriots in other parts of the country. But I will say that the other side of this is that there are working groups inside of MLS that meet regularly on these issues. Inside of my purview, there are cross-sector working groups. We have a MLS and NHL cohort that's collaborating on some of these things. And some of those affiliates have NBA franchises that are bringing that expertise in. So, I think that's the message I would leave everybody with, is there's a whole bunch of unknown unknowables. We are trying to strike that balance of best practices that work for Seattle, that match public health guidance, that fulfill our obligations, and that ultimately are about focus on public safety. And we will root everything in public safety and operating a safe event and making people safe to come back to sporting events in this city.
Can I just add one additional point, again, with trying to avoid being political, but it won't surprise anyone to hear that the states have been kind of flying blind, and that federal support and protocol and data would have been really helpful over this period of time, and looks likely to be more helpful next year in helping to guide a national response to this pandemic. So and they have lots of resources to help. And so anyway, that's another piece of the puzzle that will come into play.
Okay, that makes complete sense. So some of the unknown unknowables might become known knowables in 2021. Is that a good summary? Perfect. Okay. So as complicated as that question and answer was, I'm a little trepidatious that this one might actually be more complicated, which is why I held it back for the end. So I apologize in advance, Adrian. Michael, and I'm not going to give his last name because of this question, would like to know, as more owners are added to the overall ownership group, is there any consideration and a possibility of what would it take for fans to become individual owners of this club? What would it take for us to do that?
Look, I love the question, and we've talked about it. There are a lot of complications, and not the least of which are some SEC complications around a company being treated as a publicly traded company once a certain number of owners exist. The league has never really embraced that possibility, but things are changing in leagues. You probably people have read about investment funds now being allowed to own parts of sports franchises in all the major leagues. That didn't exist before. You hear lots of things about, I'm sure people, the buzzword today are SPACs, special purpose acquisition companies. That kind of act like a publicly traded company. A year ago, there would certainly not be a chance of a professional sports franchise being bundled up in a SPAC. And that may be possible today. So no promises, but again, I love the idea of fans owning a piece of this club. So it is something that we're open to, and we will continue to probe and see if there are opportunities for.
Excellent. Peter, Adrian, thanks for the time. Stephanie, for the questions. Maya, you're going to hang around for a little bit and speak to you guys directly about Sounders FC's social impact work to kind of conclude this evening. Maya, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Brad. Thank you guys for hanging on. I promise I'll move fast, and I want to thank the Alliance Council because they hit some of the highlights with our COVID relief fund, so I can move faster through that section. What I'd like to do tonight is give you a quick snapshot of our 2020 social impact report. And it really is sort of arising in three areas. One is that initial response to COVID, our responsive efforts through the COVID relief fund. The other are the investments we were still able to make this year in our community, direct investments. And then the third is talking about our social justice framework and how that has set us up now going forward for future action, and answer any questions that you have with the time we have left here. I know we're approaching 8:30, as many as I can, and if we can't, we will make sure that we get your questions answered after tonight concludes. But as Carmen sort of hit the highlights for us, in March when this pandemic hit and we were shut down, one of the first calls that I took was from Adrian about a day later saying, what about those small businesses in Pioneer Square, in Chinatown International District, in Soto, in those communities that serve us on match day? I mean, all of you have, I have my favorite haunts that we go to on match day. There are traditions that go back to the MLS Sounders in terms of how our fans, consume matches and live in the district, and in the ID and in Soto. And so we were able to quickly respond because we had Rave Foundation take advantage of the ability to set up a disaster relief fund through the Rave Foundation, and very quickly try to get money in the hands of small businesses that were impacted and also individuals. And I think one of the things that we miss sometimes, and when we talk about that period of time, for the Chinatown International District especially, many of those businesses were already experiencing losses by the time COVID hit us here hard in Seattle and shut us down, just because of the blatant racism and the rhetoric around the Wuhan flu. And so those businesses had already been experiencing quite a lot of economic downturn since really late January. And so we were able to fund $1.1 million. That is in large part to our ownership group, seed funded by Adrian and Lenore Hanauer, but all of our owners participated. And then the most remarkable thing was about 1,000 of you also participated. We were hopeful to maybe do 2 or 3 grant cycles. We were able to do 7. We were able to stretch it through August. And it really, what we heard remarkably from folks was that they were many folks that had no other means of getting to relief. You're talking about shift workers at hotels. We're talking about the janitorial service staff that is contracted to clean CenturyLink Field. We're talking about the hot dog vendors that serve us hot dogs on the street on Occidental on match day. And we were able to get to a lot of those people that didn't have other means to sort of get relief in that really critical time, while all of the other systems and infrastructure were coming online. It's a drop in the bucket. You'll hear Adrian say that $1.1 million is not a lot, but when we talk about being able to help almost 800 people, 785 people, and 134 small businesses, many of them minority-owned and women-owned businesses in our core historic neighborhoods, it's a pretty remarkable feat, and I want to say thank you to all of you who donated. That was March to August. In around July, we started sort of looking ahead a little bit. Through the Brave Foundation, we're able to talk to our core community partners, working with families and communities and asking them what their needs were. And we heard some heartbreaking stories, with families that were facing not only layoffs at that point and trying to fight through unemployment and the like, but we're also faced with food shortages, with the school calendar running out. And there were some gap filling there, diapers and other basic needs, things that people shouldn't go without. And we were able also to then look ahead to the school year and think in August with our folks who work directly in the school system about what it looks like to go back to school in an environment that's virtual. $95 for a family that's on free and reduced lunch pays for their internet for the year. That doesn't seem like a ton of money, but when you're talking about an entire school system that's going remote, those are the kinds of needs that matter. And we were able to pivot our our relief fund efforts through Brave Foundation to focus on those basic needs, to partner better and more creatively with our partners, be they organizations of faith, folks like the Tukwila Food Pantry, the South Seattle Chamber of Commerce, Highline School District, Seattle Public Schools, and figure out better ways to support our community through this crisis. Funnily enough, the other thing we were able to do is distribute a lot of soccer balls. Brad, I think you did a ton of those yourself. Remarkably, it seems so trivial, but one of the things that doesn't go home from elementary schools is PE equipment. And yet our kids are supposed to have 60 minutes of play a day. And how do you do that? And so we've still been able to distribute about 10,000 soccer balls. And if anything, our reach has increased in COVID. We partnered system-wide with Seattle Public Schools. We partnered system-wide with Yakima Public Schools, and we're able to supply them with soccer balls this year for their kids. And we've been able to do it in creative ways. Our Brave Foundation board members were at Westfield Center in Tukwila on the Halloween candy drive-through. And while all the kids were driving through to get candy, we were handing out hundreds and hundreds of soccer balls to those cars as well. And so it does mean a lot. Soccer can do a lot, and a ball does mean a big difference. The other thing we were able to do in that investment phase was still invest in mini pitches. So we were able this year to open 3 additional mini pitches en route to opening 26 small fields and mini pitches by 2026. And in those communities that needed it most. Our good friends, the 4-time now WNBA champion Seattle Storm, we're coming for you, Storm. We're 2 behind, but we're coming for you. And the Sounders were able to partner on the first of its kind basketball and futsal court at Des Moines Midway Park. We partnered on an art program. Brad, I think you did art with kids at Des Moines Midway Elementary School. We were able to open a mini pitch, our first collaboration with Seattle Public Schools at Rocks Hill Elementary. And last month, we opened our mini pitch at Valley View Early Learning Center for all the pre-K kids in the south end of the Highline School District in SeaTac. And also we're able to launch this fall our pre-K physical literacy curriculum that uses soccer, uses Sounders FC teaching tools to teach physical literacy and gross motor skill development for our youngest learners in our school system. We did all of that investment-wise, and then in May, we watched with all of you in horror at the murder of George Floyd and watched with a lot of emotion the unrest and the protests and the demands for justice in our own city. And we knew that a lot of our staff and a lot of our people internally were participating and feeling that acutely. And so we shifted internally to take a pause and listen. And, we had the opportunity to conduct a listening session with our staff. I want to applaud all of my colleagues who were honest and truthful about their current experiences, their past experiences, were raw with their emotion. Many of us were very emotional in listening to each other, and really to focus all of that energy on not just sort of catharsis, but on focus on the future. Like what can we do to be better? That listening session begat about 10-12 hours with a steering committee of about 40 individuals across the organization to sort of guide us on what a framework for change might look like going forward. Take the good of what we have done refine it, and position it relative to everything else in the world, that we might do, and build us a path forward. And that was really August and the launch of our social justice framework. For those of you that have seen it, you may have focused specifically on the 4 arenas for change that we are focused on. And that is fighting racism, standing for LGBTQ equality, defending the right to play, and protecting our planet. And some of those things sound familiar to all of you. Many of you have planted trees with us. Many of you have marched in the Pride Parade with us. Many of you have attended the Rave Gala or handed out soccer balls or been to a pitch opening. And we thank you for those things. But what we really want to look at going forward is, how do we make change in these areas? And it's saying that we want to participate in these arenas for change is one thing, but what's the framework for our action? And so for those of you that haven't seen it, I encourage you to go to soundersfc.com and look this up. But we also wanted to locate our work in sort of core beliefs and some promises from the organization going forward. And those core beliefs were really simple. Core belief number 1 is we believe every person voting in every election, every damn time, is necessary for change. We believe that education around bias, and the systemic impacts of bias is necessary for change. We believe the right to play is a human right, and we believe that everyone deserves environmental justice. Those are our 4 guiding beliefs going forward. They mean a lot. And we've got some work to do to hone what our actual action areas are going to be, our actions, our steps, our tactics in each of those areas. But I can tell you, saying something like defending the right to play as a human right changes the equation for us. As we look out to our partners in the Play Equity Coalition, the King County Play Equity Coalition, many of whom are our pro sports partners on a number of angles, we are looking at an absolute epidemic of a lack of physical activity on the heels of this pandemic in our communities. Health outcomes for communities of color are already impacted enough. And then you take the compounding effects of air quality in some of these communities, of safe places to play in these communities. And those compounding effects of inequality are not, we're not okay with that, and so we have to be part of that change. We have to acknowledge the intersectionality of some of these issues, and we've got to do some work internally first. And so I would also point you to our sort of the way that we want to behave going forward. There's 7 core areas and ways we want to behave. We want to use our platform to elevate experts, to partner and collaborate with experts. Our platform is one of the best tools that Sounders FC can authentically bring to the table. What are those stories we can tell that aren't being told, and how do we better frame issues? We also want to admit that we need to have a proactive policy to hire, retain, train, and promote a diverse pool of talent internally. That is something that we're committed to do. We have to look at what diversity means for us. What is the appropriate representation of our community in Seattle, of the sports community in Seattle, and of sports writ large? And we're going to commit to do that work. I know many of you are very interested specifically in the newest arena for change for us, which is fight racism. We do not have the muscles and the legs and the lungs in this and the fluency in this space yet, right? Because it is newer for us as an organization. And so we've continued the work from the steering committee, the broader steering committee, and organized an employee-led fighting racism committee internally. It's a group now that meets weekly in a big group, and a small group being led by many members of our next leaders in this company, who are also members themselves of a BIPOC background, and are representative of sort of the future that we see for ourselves in an organization. I can tell you that this group is leading us expertly and deftly through this process. We are learning a lot in partnership with their leadership, and we know we cannot be all things to all people. Soccer can help, but soccer alone is not going to solve every societal ill. But we want to make sure that as we enter 2021, we're having honest conversations with ourselves. We're looking ourselves in the mirror, and we're being led towards a future that starts with evaluating our systems, policies, and procedures to make sure that we walk the talk internally as we lend our platform, find our experts, and try to make change out in the world. And so I encourage you to go to our website, to spend some more time there if you haven't already. I can't commit tonight to specific tactics because that would foreclose the work of these really remarkable people inside of our organization who are stepping up. And when Adrian mentioned adding work to their plate, adding this work to their plate at a time when we're all very busy, because they believe, like I believe, that we can be part of the change in our community. Sounders FC can be a leader in some of these spaces, but we have to do the work first internally to get there. So I'll take your questions.
Maya, I'm always buying what you're selling. Ben, do you want to step in here? And we probably got some questions, I'm sure, for Maya.
Yeah, happy to. Thanks, Brad. And thanks, Maya. That was really awesome to hear all of the latest updates. I'll just ask a couple questions because I know we're running a little long.
Yeah.
Are there any opportunities either like presently or in the future to volunteer and or contribute to the social impact work that the club is undertaking?
I am so excited to hear this question. One of the biggest opportunities for us is when we get our house in order is to appropriately put out that call to action. I mean, the fan base of Sounders FC is probably the most remarkable tool that we have, to make change in our community. And like I said, I started this year on a very cold February day with many of you planting trees in the lower Duwamish Valley. But man, what if next year we are planting trees in a location that is, and talking about, air quality and health outcomes for kids and having a clinic and doing a whole host of other things. There's so much we can do collectively. And, we are so excited to harness the power of our fan base in a different way through this process. I don't know how yet. So yeah, use your Alliance Council friends. Cameron, I know Cameron, Stephanie, Dwayne, we did our D license together way back in the day. I know you guys know how to get a hold of me, but there's a lot of folks that are thinking about this internally and we'd love feedback.
Awesome. And then one last one, this is really thinking towards the future, but any updates on CenturyLink potentially being selected as a World Cup venue in 2026?
That's awesome. What a great closer. Talk about aspirational, forward-looking, happy times. We did a presentation directly to FIFA in July. We were supposed to be in person in Houston in April, and obviously that didn't happen. And we did a presentation to FIFA in July. We are now, responding to a bunch of requests for additional information. And so that process is still ongoing. I think we are really bullish on the potential for Seattle being a venue. It is something that I think, personally, I've joked, if there's one thing I will ever do is bring the World Cup to this city. It's a personal commitment of mine. I know Adrian feels the same way. I know Peter feels the same way. So we're plugging along. I'm hopeful still that the selection process will happen at some point in the next sort of 18 months. That's kind of still the general timeline. I mean, hopefully before we're playing the 2022 World Cup, we will find these things out. But yeah, it's still plugging along. Seattle's very much still in the mix. The Seattle Sports Commission, First and Goal Inc. and the Sounders are really leading the charge on this, and we're really bullish on the opportunity. I'm really excited to see natural grass in CenturyLink Field in the summer of 2026. So.
Love it. Awesome. Ben, thank you. Maya, as always, thank you. Everyone, thank you tonight. That concludes the program. Hang around till the very end. But I want to say a big thank you to the Alliance Council for hosting this annual business meeting. It's so important. I've attended a couple in person in the past, and the insight is always, looking back on it now, the insight is so important. It's something that you take forward with you. For the panelists, of course, providing a chance for our fans just to learn about all facets of the organization, and obviously to you, the Alliance, for tuning in and checking it out. So thank you to the media members who joined this evening and continue to cover our team and answer and have our, our bosses basically answer all the questions that you need. Any questions that weren't answered during the meeting will be downloaded, and you'll receive a direct answer from Sounders FC representatives. We hope that you guys all stay safe and healthy at this time. Mask up, stay at home. Let's celebrate Thanksgiving next April or May, maybe after a nice win. And for our next big event, don't forget to tune in. Obviously, we all know the next playoff match next Tuesday, November 24th, 7:30 p.m. against LAFC. We'll have Ante Razov on the podcast tomorrow. So we hope it gets the inside scoop and tease something out of him. But yeah, to conclude the evening, just a video to get you guys hyped for the playoffs. Go Sounders. It's always a pleasure, and take care, guys.
There's the whistle. There's your playoff spot. And the Seattle Sounders are playoff bound. Give my creation!